Don't look now, because it's been more than a decade since the world first caught a glimpse of PT, the playable teaser for a Silent Hill sequel that never was.
Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started.
It was the Jodorowsky's Dune of video games, a brilliant, experimental, ahead-of-its-time proof of concept for a game that never materialized and ultimately got discarded like yesterday's newspaper. But despite all the cancellation and delisting, this humble hour-long experience managed to become one of the all-time most influential horror games, busting into mainstream consciousness in a way that few other games have accomplished. PT was completely unique and without precedent, not to mention hugely influential on the developers who followed, as no lesser a source than Bayonetta creator Hideki Kamiya put it. Post-PT, there was a popular explosion of atmospheric stalker horror games, especially across the indie development scene. And this led directly to the revitalization and, some would say, total revolution of the rival series Resident Evil thanks to the game number 7, Biohazard, which directly mimicked the presentation and tone of PT. This was a charmingly ironic turn of events, considering that Silent Hill only came into being in the first place because Konami looked at the multi-million selling popularity of the first Resi and said, "Go make us a Jill sandwich we can slap our own branding on." The rest was history. In the 10 years that followed the aborted birth of PT, the series went completely dormant. It actually seemed as though Silent Hill might be well and truly dead, and the dream of another game would die with it. Until, that is, the triumphant return of the GOAT Silent Hill 2, the excellent 2024 remake from Bloober team, and this remake was going to be followed a year later by Silent Hill F, a proper full-fat, full-flavor new entry in the series by the dev team at Neobards Entertainment. This game was hyped in pre-release as something of a return to form, but also as an entirely fresh take on the series' key themes, the nuts and bolts combination of mechanical disempowerment and slow-burning psychological terror that gives Silent Hill such a distinct identity within the survival horror pantheon. Now, Silent Hill F has been released into the wild, and boy oh boy is this game absolutely primed for a themes and mechanics deep dive into exactly what makes it such a strange and compelling beast. So when Konami reached out and asked whether I would be interested in partnering on a video for the release of Silent Hill, I hopped the next express elevator down to the other world because I already had a script in the works, because this one, I have a plethora of big thoughts about this game. If you've seen any of my other sponsored videos, then you already know my ground rules. Total editorial control of the contents of the script and no mandatory praise. I'm gonna give you my honest and candid opinion on everything this game does right, as well as places where I think it comes up short. But this is also not a review. Plenty of people have already given their X out of 10 rating and opinion on the quality of the game. Instead, I'm incredibly excited to talk about Silent Hill F because analyzing the lore and themes of Silent Hill is a big part of how I got started on YouTube. And really, now that the game has already been out for a bit, I didn't want to just blast out a standard issue review and first impressions type of video, but I crave to dig deeper into this game with the kind of serious thematic analysis that I genuinely think it deserves. Because in my view, Silent Hill F easily stands shoulder to shoulder with the first 4 games by the original Team Silent. It's a slickly presented action horror thrill ride that puts a new spin on the core elements of the series in quite bold and effective ways. It also might be the most edgy and provocative the series has ever been, and oh boy am I excited to talk about that as well. So let's get cozy, grab a portable radio, and watch the fog roll in as the world dissolves into a kaleidoscope of rust and gore. Or, in this case, a sea of creeping kudzu and red spider lily corpse flowers. It's time to go back to our special place. The core quadrilogy of Silent Hill games by the original Team Silent is well known as being more popular outside of Japan than vice versa, which makes sense considering how these games have the unique imprint of a Japanese development studio working on a Western-style horror story in a modern New England setting, situated within the deeply esoteric lore of the Gnostic religions of pre-modern Europe. And that's not even getting into the incredibly long shadow of Twin Peaks in Japanese pop culture, something that was hugely influential to Silent Hill. The original Silent Hill games were distinctly Japanese in their survival horror mechanics, but with narratives drawn from Western locales and mythologies. And so, Silent Hill F aims to perform something like the ultimate volte-face about-face for the series. A much more internationally minded approach to the mechanics and combat design, but with a setting and narrative that draws extensively from Japanese history and the ancient customs of the Shinto religion. It's Silent Hill reimagined as a dark mirror reflection of itself. The connective through line to the original Team Silent is maintained here through the return of longtime series composer Akira Yamaoka, who scored the Fog World half of the game that takes place in the physical realm, and taking the reins as lead scenario writer is Ryokishi 07, the author of the legendary murder mystery / psychological horror series Higurashi, and its many sequels and spin-offs. It's the early 1960s Showa-era Japan. This isn't the bounteous bubble era of the 1980s that we know so well in the popular consciousness, but rather the poverty-stricken years of post-World War II reconstruction when so much of the country still lived in grinding deprivation. Our protagonist, Shimizu Hinako, lives in the rural Japanese town of Ebisegoka, which was inspired by the location scouting the devs did in the mountains, forests, and villages of the real-world Gifu prefecture. The teenage Hinako is a tomboy through and through. She keeps her hair trimmed short in a tidy bob, she's a star athlete at school, and she's got absolutely no patience for all the girly and feminine pursuits that keep her peers so preoccupied, like boys, makeup, and fashion. Aside from a handful of school chums, who secretly seem to hate her guts and consider her a romantic rival, Hinako's only close companion is her childhood best friend Shu, who is clearly nursing an unrequited crush on her. At first blush, this almost sounds like the setup to some kind of syrupy sweet slice of life anime. What does that F stand for anyways? Silent Hill Fruits Basket? But right from the start, before even the first tendril of fog has begun to creep in, the game sets up some clear dramatic stakes for Hinako. She's constantly struggling with society's expectations around how a young woman her age should behave. Her father is a seemingly abusive drunkard who's terrible with money, her mother acts like a totally submissive doormat, and her sister and best friend Junko has been pawned off as part of an arranged marriage to keep the family's fortunes afloat. All of this adds up to an utterly hateful life for Hinako. Her tomboyish disposition sees her getting bullied at school, and then regularly falling into shouting matches with her parents. After yet another one of her father's explosive day-drinking fueled outbursts, which curiously the player doesn't actually see depicted on screen, Hinako flees the family home and heads down the mountain and into town to meet up with her high school friends. And right away, well before you're getting stuck in combat or puzzles, the game scatters about collectible notes and lore diaries that tee up all sorts of wonderful red strings on the corkboard mysteries that may or may not have some bearing on the plot. There's the traditional folkloric worship of Inari fox statuary, arsenic poisonings in the local water supply, a nearby coal mine abandoned after an industrial disaster, jealous ancient spirit guardian deities, and even a dormant volcano in the mountains. Immediately after Hinako meets up with her friends in town, all hell breaks loose, trademark. Rather than blood and rust, in this incarnation of Silent Hill, the physical manifestation of the otherworld is an ever-creeping carpet of crimson spider lily corpse flowers and scarlet kudzu vines that consumes the town. After fleeing the disturbing monsters who have taken over nearly all of the town's narrow and winding streets, Hinako falls unconscious and is transported to Silent Hill F's true otherworld, the mysterious floating world of the Dark Shrine. This is an ultra-surreal scene ripped straight out of an ukiyo-e painting, wherein a handsome young man in a fox mask offers to take Hinako's hand and guide her through the horror labyrinth. Hinako will spend the rest of the game running, fighting, and puzzling across these two interconnected realms. The visceral terror of the Fog Town sequences set in the real world, which focus more on straightforward combat and exploration, and the dread-inducing dream world of the Dark Shrine levels, with their emphasis on some fairly elaborate and brain-bending lock and key puzzles, as well as combat as puzzle box fights with ever more dark and twisted variations on the Fog Town's bestiary. The environment and puzzles draw heavily from the iconography of Shintoism. This game is abundant with impossibly ornate shrines, ancient relics, divine talismans, sheeted paper garlands, holy protective amulets, and ominous statuary. Just like how the original 4 games are rooted in esoteric European Gnostic lore, Silent Hill F is equally immersed in Japan's ancient Shinto mythology. There are no angelic choirs here, no fire and brimstone. This is a world of darkness, decay, and creeping dread, a true-to-myth depiction of Shintoism's Umineko, the land of the dead. There's an intensely ominous beauty to this game, an enchanting, ornate world of inscrutable gods and monsters, indifferent to the struggles of humanity, with no clear distinctions when it comes to our mortal conceptions of good and evil. The setting is Japanese down to its roots, and this is a big change for Silent Hill, but it also really isn't. The Silent Hill we see depicted across the series is conceptually much more akin to the Land of the Dead, or World of Darkness, of the Shinto mythos than any resemblance it might have to a Greco-Roman or Abrahamic version of the underworld. And just like the other world of Silent Hill, Japan's Land of the Dead is both spiritually and geographically connected to our physical world. According to Shinto myths and legends, travel between the two is indeed possible for the damned souls who were spiritually fortified and or misfortunate enough to make the journey themselves.
At first, I thought I was losing my mind. But now I know I'm not. It's not me. This whole town. It's being invaded by the other world. A world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life.
The profusion of red spider lilies is a key symbolic motif. In Shinto mythology, the spider lily, or corpse flower, is a kind of memento mori that symbolizes the spiritual connection all living things have to the other side, aka the world of the dead and land of darkness. In Silent Hill F, these flowers carry dual layers of meaning. There's the surface layer, with the player fighting and struggling through the creeping, physical manifestation of the hell world, and there's the symbolic thematic layer, where the all-consuming floral invasion represents Hinako's fear that passing on from childhood into adulthood is akin to death itself. Almost all of the theming and symbolism in Silent Hill F speaks to Hinako's struggle with the expectations around a woman's proper place in society and her anxieties around the imminent end of her childhood. The game's bestiary in particular speaks volumes for itself here. There's the disturbing marionettes who twist and contort themselves in a grimy and bloody parody of sex appeal, taking a page from Silent Hill 2's Nurses, the creepy, giggling scarecrow schoolchildren who stay stock still until the gaze of the camera is turned away in order to then sneak up on you and slash you to ribbons, the disgustingly lecherous liquor man enemies who want to paw at and slobber all over you, and the monstrously fleshy birthing beasts, complete with an in-game codex entry that says, "I would rather die than become one of these things." So yeah, the sociological symbolism of these monsters is about as subtle as the abstract daddy or the closer. Silent Hill F may be thousands of miles and multiple decades away from Silent Hill main, but we're still exploring some incredibly disturbing subject matter on the same thematic terrain that is the series' own brand of deeply personal psychological horror. Far from being Silent Hill in name only, this is peak Silent Hill, with a use of visual motifs and symbolic language that easily rivals the best games put out by the original Team Silent. Which is quite appropriate indeed, considering just how much Silent Hill F has in common with the game I consider to be the absolute pinnacle of the series. In so many ways, it's incredibly on-the-nose appropriate that Silent Hill F is the next game to come out after the Bloober remake of Jimmy Sunderland's big New England Spookathon, because moving in chronological order after Silent Hill 2 comes 3, the story of Heather Mason, secret daughter of the first game's protagonist and unwilling vessel for the rebirth of the Order's demented Holy Mother and the Lord of Serpents.
Looks like God didn't make it.
Just on the surface level alone, the parallels are easily apparent. Both games feature a female protagonist, both offer refreshed and slicked up presentation and mechanics compared to what came before, and both take place in a new setting outside of the geographical bounds of Silent Hill that we saw depicted in prior games. But going even deeper, 3 and F are both games that deal heavily with female-coded and highly gendered themes of adolescence, identity, motherhood and birth, sexual violence, and the struggle to achieve personal agency despite a restrictive social environment. And hey, I mean, they even included a Robbie the Rabbit pink bunny outfit for Hinako as a bonus for the game's deluxe edition. Hinako is 1960s Japan Heather, the F is a twisted and stylized 3 in reverse, quod erat demonstrandum. But seriously, the inclusion of the pink rabbit costume here is quite intentional, because the game's creators obviously want to draw the player's attention to all the parallels between F and 3. The most obvious parallel here is how both games put a much greater focus on their action mechanics compared to what came before. I'm old enough to remember that one of the main critiques of Silent Hill 3 when it first came out was that the combat feels too good. Which is to say, the game gave you more options for self-defense and recovery, like the decoy jerky and the block ability, and improved the movement controls so that things no longer felt quite so much like you were lugging the player character through waist-high wet cement. Yeah, the consensus among series superfans back in the mid-2000s was that Silent Hill 3 might be a good game to play, but 2 was the real and true masterpiece of effective psychological horror thanks to the greater sense of disempowerment. So it's just about the supreme ultimate irony that the general gaming discourse is now having this exact same debate all over again about the newest Silent Hill game. In the run-up to the release of Silent Hill F, there were endless hyperventilating hot takes about how the presence of a dedicated dodge move and a stamina bar meant that Silent Hill has gone Souls-like, so much so that the devs actually felt compelled to put out a pre-release statement clarifying that Silent Hill F is not a Souls-like. Not like that'd stop anybody though. Setting aside that Souls-like is perhaps the most reductionist and artless term to grace gaming since Metroidvania and Doom Clone before it, there was a certain beloved survival horror psychological thriller that had both a stamina system and a dodge move, which came out while FromSoft's Hidetaka Miyazaki was still working on account management best practices for business productivity software. Just a little known gem called Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill F takes the over-the-shoulder perspective seen in the Silent Hill 2 remake and supercharges it. There's target lock-on, a Bayonetta-style perfect dodge that restores stamina, and an instant stun counterattack move where you press the heavy attack trigger right as the enemy is winding up and flashes a telltale chromatic aberration visual aura. Your light and heavy attacks, dodges, and ability to sprint all drain the stamina meter. Depleted entirely, and Hinako will become exhausted and temporarily defenseless, adding precious additional seconds to the timer until your stamina begins to recharge itself. There's also a sanity meter that can be used via the left trigger to activate focus mode and charge up extra potency for your melee attacks. Or you can save your sanity to have in reverse as an added layer of defense against foes who deal spiritual damage. Where F's mechanics differentiate themselves the most from other Silent Hills is in the arsenal. There are no firearms or ranged attacks, only the makeshift melee weapons you'll find scattered about the environment as you explore. Which, it's mid-century Japan. This ain't America, where you can walk out of a Cabela's with a military-grade arsenal in far less time and paperwork than it takes to see an emergency room doctor. Melee weapons in Silent Hill F have limited durability, but it's no Breath of the Wild type situation. Most weapons you find can last you through about a half dozen encounters, and any favorites you get attached to can have their lifespan extended through the consumable repair toolkits you'll find scattered about. There are equipable Omamori charms that offer various character perks like increased stamina or weapon durability, which can make a significant difference to your playstyle, especially on higher difficulties. And in a first for a mainline Silent Hill, F also limits Hinako's carrying capacity for consumables and restoratives, forcing the player to think purposefully about which supplies they pick up, which ones they use, and what they're willing to leave behind. Fortunately, your carrying capacity can be upgraded, alongside an interesting but somewhat superfluous RPG progression system that sees you serving up valuable consumables as offerings at the miniature Hokora shrines that double as the game's save points. Your offerings are exchanged for faith points, which can be used for RPG-style upgrades to your health, sanity, stamina, and Omamori slots. In the aggregate, all of these systems are simply a new coat of paint applied on top of the signature survival horror formula. The sense of being constantly pressured by looming threats, where the player is forced to manage multiple interlocking resources and meters, with every action they take incurring some kind of cost that further depletes your limited arsenal, including feelings of disempowerment, desperation, and dread. Even the oh-so-hated weapon durability system does double duty here, as both a central gameplay mechanic as it takes on a similar role as ammo scarcity in other survival horror games, since Silent Hill F doesn't feature firearms or other weapons that require ammunition, and as a key theme that is properly integrated in the narrative and reinforces a setting. Tsukumogami is the real-world folkloric belief in Japan that tools and other household goods eventually gain sentience and become lesser gods, or kami, as they are used and repaired down through the years. According to most legends, by the time an inanimate object is about 100 years old, it will have become a fully fledged kami imbued with the spirit of its many years of service. And the very reason that Hinako finds so many common household items that can be used as weapons scattered about town, baseball bats, culinary knives, lumber axes, is because the residents of Ebisugoka are ardent practitioners of Tsukumogami, who believe that old items nearing the end of their lifespan should be left as offerings at the Inari Fox statues around town. But this is a seriously excellent convergence of themes and mechanics. Even the legendary Breath of the Wild didn't go this far to try and make the player give a damn about its janky weapon durability system. If there's one main aspect where I think Silent Hill F can come in for some fair and deserved criticism, it's the combat. The game feel is solid, with good audio-visual feedback as your blows land on your foes with one satisfying thwack after another. But much like the Silent Hill 2 remake, this game leans really heavily on its combat, to the point where the final 20% or so of the runtime becomes an almost non-stop gauntlet of combat encounters that get a little repetitive and tiresome by the end of things. Walk into a closed arena that traps you inside, defeat all the enemies, rinse and repeat. I'd also say, while hard difficulty is recommended for the puzzles, set the combat difficulty to story for your first playthrough. I went in on hard combat like I had something to prove, since the in-game tooltip recommended this difficulty for players experienced with action games, and I definitely regretted it by the end of things because it makes some of the boss fights and combat encounters much more frustrating than they need to be for your first playthrough. I'd say save it for your New Game Plus run if you do one. But man, there's just so much else here to cover with this game. It feels almost impossible to do this game justice in a one-off video like this. I'm sure you could do a whole ass video, say, just on how there's a cheeky little shout out to PT baked into the back half of the game, where Hinako finds herself retreating L-shaped residential hallways over and over again, with the generic suburban domestic scene slowly twisting into something absolutely terrifying. It's goddamn brilliant. I was hooting and hollering in my seat like an absolute madman when I came to this part of the game and realized what was going on. So while this video is my own humble offering in the early days of the Silent Hill F discourse, I'm really excited to see what kinds of galaxy-brained analysis both the existing fandom and all the newcomers are going to restlessly dream up in the coming years. It feels strange, but it's actually exciting to be a Silent Hill fan right now, which is something we haven't been able to say for a long time. If the main thing that draws you to Silent Hill is the overarching mythos, the cult, Valtiel, the Metatron, the haunted history of the town, then honestly I can understand why a game like Silent Hill F might come up short for you. With the exception of one key moment, there is almost nothing connecting Silent Hill F to the story and lore of the previous games in the series. And even more so than the manufactured panic around it being a secret Souls-like, there's been a ton of social media rage-bait brain rot, coming mostly from people who have not and will never play the game, that Silent Hill F is some kind of strident all-caps screen bludgeoning the player over the head with its raw and unambiguous hatred of traditional gender roles, which just is not the case with this game, like, at all. Sure, on the surface level, Silent Hill F is an extended allegory about the societal roles women were expected to inhabit in Showa-era Japan, where an arranged marriage and Yamato Nadeshiko were still the norm. In a country that to this day upholds some highly rigid cultural ideals around gender roles, that's not polemic, it's just a plain statement of fact. But Silent Hill F is about so much more than just proclaiming, "Didn't it absolutely suck to be a woman in mid-century Japan?" This game will resonate with anyone who has at some point in their life felt like there's a disconnect between the person society expects them to be and who they actually are. Which, if we're being honest with ourselves, is a whole lot of people these days. Silent Hill F is perhaps the ultimate interactive expression of the theme, have I gone insane? Or is the cruel and inhuman world I'm living in the real crazy maker all along? The very end of the game also features an incredible mid-credits twist, the kind that recontextualizes the whole narrative, all of the characters and everything the player thought they understood. Beyond the twist ending, Silent Hill F then adds a bunch of totally new areas, puzzles, boss fights, and story sequences in New Game Plus, which add further depth and color to the narrative a la Nier Automata. And with each new revelation, the truth behind the story becomes even more dark, disturbing, and cosmic horror-inducing than the player could have possibly imagined. With the benefit of hindsight, these twists make the theming of Silent Hill F something of a brilliant provocation on the part of the writer Ryoshiki 7. Discussions around gender and social roles are particularly prominent across the world today, including East Asia, and Silent Hill F explores these ideas in its own distinctive way. First, via the surface-level use of themes drawn from the women's rights movement that emerged in 1960s Japan, i.e. the game's exact setting. And then, by executing a magnificent rug pull that casts the narrative in an entirely new light, and makes the story feel all the more universal through its highly effective use of psychological horror theming. The story of a vulnerable young woman, steeped in Japanese mythology and ghost stories, grappling with themes of psychological horror, physical disempowerment, and externalized oppression, and underpinned by a kick-ass combat system that's somehow strangely addictive and Moorish in spite of it all. So yeah, I have this feeling. Silent Hill F is secretly the fatal frame game I've been waiting over a decade for. Speaking of yet another beloved survival horror franchise that hasn't seen the light of day in 10 or more years, Silent Hill F feels like a return to form not just for the eponymous series, but also the simultaneously hidden in plain sight resurrection of the long-dormant Fatal Frame, just in a different seeming disguise and minus the camera obscura. Silent Hill F is an excellent game that both sets itself apart from the recent remake of 2, while also remixing and recontextualizing the core elements of Silent Hill 3 into something visceral, compelling, and entirely new. From the art and visual presentation to the mechanics to the audio design, it's clear that a considerable amount of care, effort, and love was taken with this game to ensure it was up to par with the quality of previous Silent Hill games, while still having its own identity and vibe. More so than maybe any other Silent Hill game. In a strange and kind of wonderful inversion of how so many horror games that came after PT were influenced by and in conversation with, Silent Hill itself is now in deep conversation with its own contemporaries and predecessors. It's all in Konami's hands for the time being, and the future is never guaranteed. But right now, at this moment, Silent Hill F represents a new lease on life for this series, easily akin to what Resident Evil 7 managed to accomplish, bridging the past, present, and future of the same survival horror genre that it helped to create. Which is also low-key why I decided to mirror the title of this video with the one on Resident Evil 7 I made many years ago. I'm so excited for what's to come. If this was your first video of mine, hey, I'm Ragnar, and on this channel I cover old games, indie games, horror games, and combinations thereof. And if you enjoyed this little foray into Ebisugoka, you'll probably find a ton of videos on games that might be right up your alley. If you'd like to support my channel, the most substantial way to do that is to join my fellow Patreon supporters with a monthly donation. It really helps out a great deal. And on my Patreon I also regularly release backer-only bonus videos, you get access to the Patreon exclusive Discord, and overall, you'll get my heartfelt gratitude in helping me keep doing what I love. So thanks a lot for considering, and as always, I'll say ta for now with a heartfelt shout out to these lovely supporters. John Boring, Dana Rosa, Ari Orson, Morgan K, The Spiral Architect, Thwagam, Matt Gretton, Giselle, Cannon Ward, Link Hughes, Sunny Sky, Thomas Brunner, Catherine Escobar, Chrissy, Righteous Itch, Kerry George, Nathan Gillick, Swiss Hackmod, Phoenix Up Above, Kyle Lee, Tabby, Sable Cow, Billy Lott, Terraflops, Ronan Crafts, Hendrik van Rensselaer, Sulmatul, Thwagam, Hunter Crawford and Margaret Strawn, Nineball 9606, Shannon Blue, Angelo Benedetti, Kaspar Ram, Vasily Prokhorov, Ronan Crom aka Daniel 242172, Laird Wackala, Amber Wiggins, Corey Marr, Chuck Taylor, David Zelenak, Aria, Gehennas, Zodi, Lucas Ferreira Leite, Aurora Milpomene Crescendo, Uziel 1447, J.R. Smith, LSN HNG, Vincent Kavanaugh, Nikot the Brave, and Gene. Until next time, ta-ta!